Hey guys, so as I promised, I brought home our read aloud book, The Land of Stories, The Wishing Spell. So this is the one that we were getting ready to start reading right when we had to have our little separation from each other. So it'll be super nice to be able to read this together and still be able to enjoy our favorite time of day. So the first book is called The Wishing Spell from this series. There are quite a few of them, and it's by Chris Colfer. And if you've ever seen or heard the TV show Glee, he's actually one of the actors from that show. So our book starts with a prologue, and that's what summarizes what's been going on in our setting with our characters before this story takes place. So I'm going to start reading the prologue, and it's called The Queen's Visit. The dungeon was a miserable place. Light was scarce and flickered from the torches bolted to the stone walls. Foul-smelling water dripped inside from the moat circling above the palace. Large rats chased each other across the floor searching for food. This was no place for a queen. So what I want you to be thinking about right now is kind of like the mood of this setting. What is the setting and what is the mood? How's that making you feel? It was just past midnight, and all was quiet except for the occasional rustle of a chain. Through the heavy silence, a single set of footsteps echoed through the halls as someone climbed down the spiral steps and into the dungeon. So it also gave you the when part of the setting there. A young woman emerged down the steps, dressed head to toe in a long emerald cloak. She cautiously made her way past the rows of cells, sparking the interest of the prisoners inside. With every step she took, her pace became slower and slower, and her heart beat faster and faster. The prisoners were arranged according to crime. The deeper she walked into the dungeon, the crueler and more dangerous the criminals became. Her sights were set on the cell at the very end of the hall, where the prisoners of special interest was being watched by a large private guard. Think about if we've read a story before and if we've talked about, remember in Percy Jackson where they had the worst of the worst criminals go, the worst of the worst people? So kind of connection between the two stories here. Think about our settings. And think about our character here too that's entering the dungeon in this cloak, this emerald green cloak. So think about what kind of vibes the author's trying to give you about her. So already being what is she wearing and what characteristics do we attribute to her based on her outfit alone. Let's see if we're correct here. Lost my place. The woman had come to ask a question. It was a simple question, but it consumed her thoughts every day, kept her lying awake most nights, and was the only thing she dreamed about with the little sleep she managed. Only one person could give her the answer she needed, and that person was on the other side of the prison bars ahead. I wish to see her, the cloaked woman said to the guard. No one is allowed to see her, the guard said, almost amused by the request. I'm on strict orders from the royal family. The woman lowered her hood and revealed her face. Now, right now, I want you to make an inference about who is this character, because I think you know her. Her skin was as pale as snow. Her hair as dark as coal. Think about what type of figure language was there, too. That's a good figure language. And her eyes were as green as the forest. Her beauty was known throughout the land, and her story was known even beyond that. Who do you think this is right now? And if she's going to the prison to ask somebody a question, who do you think is behind bars? Make that inference. Your Majesty, please forgive me, the stunned guard apologized. He quickly bent into an overly pronounced bow. I wasn't expecting anyone from the palace. No apology necessary, she said, but please do not speak of my presence here tonight. Of course, the guard said, nodding. The woman faced the bars, waiting for them to be raised, but the guard hesitated. What do you think hesitated means? Think about the vocabulary word. I'm kind of hesitating right now because I lost my place. Are you sure you want to go in there, Your Highness? The guard said. There's no telling what she's capable of. I must see her, the woman said, at any cost. The guard began turning a large circular lever, and the bars of the cell rose. The woman took a deep breath, and she continued past them. She journeyed through a longer, darker hallway where a series of bars and barriers were raised and then lowered after she walked past them. Finally, she reached the end of the hall. The last set of bar was raised, and she stepped into the cell. The prisoner was a woman. She sat on a stool in the center of the cell and stared up at the small window. The prisoner waited a few moments before acknowledging the visitor behind her. It was the first visitor she had ever had, and she knew who it was without looking. There was only one person it could be. Here we go, we're finding out who it is. "Hello, Snow White." "Were you right?" the prisoner said softly. Now, who was in that prison cell? Ready? "Hello, stepmother," Snow White replied with a nervous quiver. I hope you are well." Although Snow White had rehearsed exactly what she wanted to say, she was now finding it nearly impossible to speak. "I heard you are the queen now," her stepmother said. "It's true," Snow White said. "I've inherited the throne as my father intended. So, what do I owe this honor? Have you come to watch me wither away?" her stepmother said. There was such authority and power to her voice. It was known to make the strongest of men melt like ice. What type of figurative language is that? Melt like ice. "On the contrary," Snow White said, "I've come to understand." "To understand what?" the stepmother asked harshly. "Why?" Snow White said hesitantly. "Why you did what you did." And with this finality, let me try that again. And with this, finally, she said, I'm butchering that part good, just like class, right? And with this finally said, Snow White felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Well, that's figure language too, a weight lift off her shoulders. She had finally asked the question that had been so strongly on her mind. Half of the challenge was over. "There are many things about this world that you don't understand," the stepmother said, and turned to look at her stepdaughter. It was the first time in a long time that Snow White had seen her stepmother's face. It was the face of a woman who had once possessed beauty without flaw, and the face of a woman who had once been queen. Now, the woman sitting before her was just a prisoner, whose looks had faded into a permanent, sorrowful scowl. "That may be," Snow White said, "but can you blame me for trying to find some sort of reason behind your actions?" In the recent years of Snow White's life had become the most scandalous of the kingdom's royal history. Everyone knew the story of the fair princess who'd taken refuge with the 7 dwarfs hiding from her jealous stepmother. Everyone knew of the infamous poison apple and the dashing prince who had saved Snow White from false death. What does infamous mean? An infamous poison apple. Think about that. Think about if there's any context clues. Let me read that part again. Everyone knew of the infamous poison apple and the dashing prince who had saved Snow White from a false death. Can you decode those? The story was simple, but the aftermath was not. Even with a new marriage and a monarchy to occupy her time. Think about Mani. Remember, uni mono means, so what's a monarchy? Think about the royal family that we know that's over in England. Even with a new marriage and a monarchy to occupy her time, Snow White found herself constantly wondering if theories of her stepmother's vanity were true. Remember vanity? That's been a vocabulary word, and we learned the song, "You're so vain." Remember that? So you should be able to figure out the stepmother's vanity. What does that mean? Something inside the new queen refused to believe that someone could be so malicious. That's a strong word too, malicious. This book has really good vocabulary. So malicious. If we're using that as a character trait of the evil queen, what do you think that means? "Do you know what they're calling you out there?" Snow White asked. "Outside these prison walls, the world refers to you as the evil queen." "If that is what the world has labeled me, then it is the name I shall learn to live with," the evil queen said. "Once the world has made a decision, there is little anyone can do to change its mind." Snow White was astonished by how little her stepmother cared. Astonished. What do you think that means there? She was astonished to hear how little her stepmother cared. But Snow White needed her to care. She needed to know there was some humanity left in her. They wanted to execute you after they discovered your crimes against me. The whole kingdom wanted you dead. Snow White's voice faded to a faint whisper as she fought off emotions building up inside her. But I wouldn't allow it. I couldn't. Am I supposed to thank you for sparing me? The evil queen asked. If you expect someone to fall at your feet and express gratitude, you've come to the wrong cell. I didn't do it for you. I did it for myself, Snow White said. Like it or not, you are the only mother I have ever known. I refuse to believe that you are the soulless monster the rest of the world claims you to be. Whether it's true or not, I believe there is a heart deep down inside of you. Tears rolled down Snow White's pale face. She had promised herself that she would stay strong, but she had lost control of her emotions once she was in her stepmother's presence. Then I'm afraid you're wrong, the evil queen said. The only soul I've ever had died a long time ago, and the only heart you'll find in my possession is a heart of stone. The evil queen did indeed have a heart of stone, but not inside of her. That's a phrase we typically use. When we say the idiom, someone has a heart of stone, it typically would describe the evil queen, cruel and malicious and mean and uncaring. But right down the story, they're saying the evil queen actually has a heart of stone with her, the actual possession. That's interesting. Let's see more. A rock in the shape of the size of a human heart was on the small table in the corner of the cell. It was the only item the evil queen had been permitted to keep when she was arrested. Snow White recognized the stone from her childhood. It had always been very precious to her stepmother, and the evil queen had never let it out of her sight. Snow White had never been allowed to touch it or hold it, but nothing was stopping her now. She walked across the cell, picked it up, and curiously stared down at it. It brought back so many memories. All the neglect and sadness her stepmother had caused her as a child rushed through her. So do you think that the stone brings back positive feelings or negative feelings for Snow White? All of my life, I only wanted one thing, Snow White said. Your love. When I was a girl, I used to spend hours hiding in the palace, just hoping that you would notice I was missing. But you never did. You spent your days in the chambers with your mirrors and your skin creams and the stone. You spent more time with strangers and with anti-aging methods than you did with your own daughter. But why? The evil queen did not answer. You tried to kill yourself 4 times, 3 of which you attempted yourself. You tried to kill me 4 times, 3 of which you attempted yourself. Snow White said, shaking her head in disbelief. When you dressed as the old woman and came to me at the dwarf's cottage, I knew it was you. I knew you were dangerous, but I kept letting you in. I kept hoping that you would change. I let you harm me. Snow White had never confessed this to anyone, and she couldn't help but bury her face in her palms of her hands and cry after saying it. You think you know heartbreak? The evil queen said so sharply that it startled the stepdaughter. You know nothing of pain. You never received affection from me, but from the moment you were born, you were loved by the whole kingdom. Others, however, are not so fortunate. Others, Snow White, sometimes the only loves they've ever known are taken from them. Snow White did not know what to say. What love was she referring to? Are you speaking of my father? Snow White asked. The evil queen closed her eyes and shook her head. Naive is such a privileged trait, she said. Believe it or not, Snow White, I had my own life before I came into yours. Snow White grew quiet and slightly ashamed of course she knew her stepmother had a life prior to marrying her father, but she had never considered what it had consisted of. Her stepmother had always been such a private person. Snow White never had reason to. Where is my mirror? The evil queen demanded. It's been destroyed, Snow White told her. Suddenly, the evil queen's stone became much heavier in Snow White's hand. Snow White didn't know if it was really happening or if she was just imagining it. Her arms became tilted from holding the stone heart, and she had to put it aside. There is so much you're not telling me, Snow White said. There are so many things you've kept from me all these years. The evil queen lowered her head and stared at the ground. She remained silent. I may be the only person in the world with any compassion for you. Please tell me it isn't going to waste, Snow White pleaded. If there were events in your past that influenced your recent decisions, please explain them to me. Still, there was nothing. I'm not leaving here until you tell me, Snow White yelled, raising her voice for the first time ever in her life. Fine, the evil queen said. Snow White took a seat on another stool in the cell. The evil queen waited a moment before beginning, and Snow White's anticipation grew. That word anticipation, it's back again. Your story will forever be romanticized. Do you know a word in romanticize, a root word there? That should help you figure that out. She told Snow White, no one will ever think twice about mine. I will continue to be degraded into nothing but a grotesque villain until the end of time. Think about grotesque. Does that sound like gross? It does, doesn't it? But what the world fails to realize is that a villain is just a victim whose story hasn't been told. Everything I have done, my life's work, and my crimes against you has all been for him. Are you thinking right now, who? Who's him? That's what I'm thinking. I want to know. Who has she done all these terrible things for? Why would you do terrible things for somebody? I want to learn more about the queen. Snow White felt her heart grow heavy. Her head was spinning and curiosity had taken over her entire body. Who? She asked so quickly that she forgot to hold back the desperation in her voice. Desperation. Do you hear desperate there? The evil queen closed her eyes and let her memory surface. Images of places and people from the past flew out from the back of her mind like fireflies in a cave. Like fireflies in a cave. Figurative language there. What type? There was so much that she had seen in her younger years, so many things she wished that she remembered, and so many things she wished to forget. I will tell you about my past, or at least the past of someone I once was, the evil queen said, but consider yourself warned. My story is not one that ends with a happily ever after. Typically fairy tales do end with a happily ever after, don't they? And that's the end of that chapter. So stay tuned because tomorrow we're going to start chapter 1. That's called Once Upon a Time. Can't wait to read again. Miss you guys. Bye. Love you.